land of majestic beauty, a land of tremendous sorrow. Nagorno-Karabakh, where a forgotten ethnic war still traumatizes a civilian population. This is the story of one group's effort to lend a hand to people in need. It begins simply in this living room in Belmont, Massachusetts. The Armenian Children's Milk Fund is attempting to bring 20 tons of infant formula in to women and children trapped in the war. It is a complex and dangerous humanitarian mission that will involve people from 5 countries, engage airplanes, trucks, and helicopters. Rafi Manjikian is a child psychotherapist and one of the founders of the Milk Fund. He is risking his life to bring in the aid.
There's loss of life every single day there. Every single day, children die. There is that, anxiety of not knowing what to expect. But it's a risk that I'm willing to take.
The killing fields of Nagorno-Karabakh. The Armenians living here were cut off from the rest of Armenia by Soviet planning under Stalin, which left it as a semi-autonomous enclave within the borders of Azerbaijan. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the people of Karabakh sought their independence. But newly independent Azerbaijan viewed this territory as its own and moved to control it. What began as pogroms and ethnic rifle skirmishes quickly escalated into all-out war. Today, the Armenians are locked in a bloody stand for self-determination against an Azerbaijani government determined to take the land militarily. As in most wars, civilians are caught in the conflict.
Women and children in Karabakh are suffering greatly. It's understandable that men go to war, they fight. Women don't go to war, children don't go to war to fight. These people are being victimized by this war.
Zvartnots Airport, Armenia. The Milk Fund's infant formula has arrived. It joins a larger shipment of humanitarian aid brought in by Christian Solidarity International, one of the only aid organizations worldwide willing to go into Karabakh. From here, the shipment will pass overland by truck into the war zone. Baroness Caroline Cox is the Deputy Speaker of England's House of Lords. She is leading an international observer delegation as part of the operation. Baroness Cox has traveled to Karabakh 19 times, dodging bullets and bombs in an effort to focus world attention and find a peaceful resolution to the conflict.
What is particularly tragic about this war is the fact that Karabakh is this little blockaded, besieged enclave. Most of the people in the world don't hear about it, they don't know about it. So not only are they suffering, as war tragically brings suffering, but also they very often feel forgotten.
Life goes on in Nagorno-Karabakh. Mothers bake their own bread. Water is fetched from a neighborhood well. Few cars are left on the road. People lead what seems 19th century lives, not by choice, but by the necessities of war. Stepanakert is a city of women, children, and the old. Virtually all men of fighting age are on the front, just a few miles from here.
There are tremendous losses. Virtually every family has a relative, an immediate family member, someone that has died. There are buildings that are standing there as skeletons and ghosts within the city. I get this sense that I see people that are in distress, people that are pained, people that are weary.
A year ago, Azeri troops held the high ground and pounded this city with as many as 400 missiles a day, forcing the residents underground. Armenian forces lashed back, taking the land in a military offensive. Azeri civilians were killed and thousands displaced. Since then, life has been calmer for the Armenians here. The city is outside Azeri artillery range. But in recent days, a new kind of terror has begun to victimize the civilian population: aerial bombardment. Just an hour after its arrival in Karabakh, the delegation's first meal is interrupted by 4 bombs dropped from 30,000 feet. An old woman out collecting wood a half a mile away is killed in the blast. the war does not stop for international observers.
With the continuing military offensives against civilian targets, the suffering is horrific. The number of casualties coming in is shocking. It's just going on all the time. And the international political community doesn't really seem to want to engage.
It is not hard to find tragedy in Karabakh. Stop anyone on the street and you will hear a personal story of suffering and loss. Last week, Samuel Avakian returned from the horrors of fighting war on the front to what he thought would be the sanctuary of his home and family in Stepanakert. Just hours before he reached home, his house was leveled. His pregnant wife, 12-year-old daughter, and 8-year-old son killed. Innocent victims of a direct hit from an early morning bombing raid.
They bombed everything. My children, my wife. It's very difficult, extremely difficult. What am I going to do after this? How am I going to live my life?
Neighbors Arik Petrosian was the children's piano teacher. She was hanging laundry at the time of the attack.
I could hear the planes overhead. The kids were in the house. I yelled, "Lie on the floor, lie down right where you are." As soon as they laid down, there was a loud noise. All my windows broke. I came out and saw that the other house had been destroyed.
The international community knows this is happening. These gross violations of human rights. The fact that the Azeris can deliberately bomb again and again civilian targets. Until relatively recently, Azeris and Armenians lived together in this land very peacefully. The Azeris, like any other human population, there are many good people, many kind people. Azeri victims of this war suffer like the Armenian victims. So I have no bone of contention with ordinary Azeri people. And I've met many of them and my heart goes out to them. But I am profoundly critical of Azeri foreign policy and record of its response to the Karabakh problem, the regime, which is committed to carrying out what can only be called ethnic cleansing.
After a pounding 12-hour journey overland from Armenia, the humanitarian shipment has arrived in Nagorno-Karabakh. It is a tenuous lifeline to people who are virtually cut off from the outside world. Rafi Monjikian's job is to ensure that the infant formula is delivered to the people who need it most.
We know that there will be loss of life. We take that into account. There's a war going on. And the face of this war is one that reaches into a civilian population. I think in a very small way we're trying to support the prospects of survival, enhance the likelihood of kids making it through.
Children's Hospital, Stepanakert. Food shortages and stress from the war make it difficult for nursing mothers to feed their children. Infant formula can mean the difference between life and death for many newborns here. But the hospital's supply has run out. The Milk Fund's shipment will keep them going for another 4 months.
They need to have some foods to supplement the breastfeeding. We are just trying to give a stopgap measure while we try to reintroduce the breast milk so that the child can get the best nourishment. We are looking to make sure that we can sustain their lives in as many ways that we can.
The hospital has 125 beds, but last night just 30 young patients stayed here. The building was bombed once, and the fear of another attack keeps most families away. Aoife Yanyura feels she has no choice. Her 10-year-old daughter Anush became so sick with fear, Aoife didn't know where else to turn.
I brought my daughter to the hospital because she has terrible headaches which were not going away. She couldn't stand up anymore. She's afraid of the Grad missiles and the bombs. During her sleep, she'll jump up suddenly and start screaming, the plane is here. But there isn't anything that night. I am alone. It's frightening.
This is home for over 200 refugees, a nursery school in the middle of the city. Lena Avedijian and her family have lived here for 2 years.
The men from the front said that our village was going to fall. We had to run as fast as we could. For 2 days we were on the road, sometimes walking, sometimes in cars or tractors. Finally we made it to Stepanakert.
When she fled her village in the face of advancing Azeri troops, Lena thought the worst was behind her. That was before her 14-year-old grandson stepped on a landmine near here and was killed. She hopes the Milk Fund's aid will preserve the life of her other grandchild.
The most precious thing in the world is life. We should take any stride that we can to preserve life. Some of the things that give me some hope is that the simple dignity of being a child, running around, getting excited, laughing, kicking around a ball in the rubble. The simple dignity of being a little child, it's not spoiled. But at a moment's notice, a bomb will fall. It can happen at any time. The women and children in Karabakh are suffering greatly. In times of war, there should be corridors of peace and tranquility for these people.
It is beautiful in Nagorno-Karabakh this time of year. The orchards are in bloom. Amidst the beauty, an overbearing sadness. The village of Moshkalashant has turned out to bury one of its own, a 32-year-old named Rudig. Last year, an Azeri missile took the lives of 5 villagers who were eating lunch in the center of town. Rudig survived the blast, but died later in a hospital in Armenia. Now, on the anniversary of the shelling, his remains are being returned to the village where he lived his life.
The people of Karabakh, largely blockaded, beleaguered, bombarded, have had very little voice, and the world has been largely ignorant of their predicament. And we feel that they run a real risk of another genocide unless the international community take note and take action to prevent that happening. How long can they go on? And how long can the world, or will the world, allow them to go on paying with their lifeblood just for the freedom to live in their own historic land? Unless something happens, and happens soon, there is a real risk that they can bleed to death.
There will be no rest for the war-weary today. As the casket is lowered into the grave, 3 planes shoot across the sky. Their bombs can be heard exploding in a neighboring village.
The war is there. It can happen at any moment, and it doesn't happen at the front line. These people are being victimized by this war.
April 24th, Yerevan, the capital of independent Armenia. Hundreds of thousands of silent mourners file past the eternal flame at the Martyrs' Monument. Each leaves a flower in memory of the 1.5 million Armenians who perished in the genocide of 1915. When Hitler laid plans for the Jewish Holocaust, he asked rhetorically, "Who speaks today of the Armenians?" As the crowd files by, many say a prayer for the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabahk and wonder who among us will remember them.
And